The next thing that happens is that when you stand here on Earth, the hydrostatic pressure, you're 70% water. So the hydrostatic pressure down in the bottom of your feet is almost an atmosphere greater than it is at the top of your head. And that helps you stand erect as a human being. When you go up on orbit, your body says, hey, I don't need all that water or fluid down in my legs anymore. So right away you have what's called a fluid shift, and your body is getting rid of all of that water in your lower extremities. And not only do you urinate a lot, but it fills all your sinus cavities and gives you a blazing headache. And, we call it moon face.
Which bit of the world looks most beautiful or surprising when you're orbiting it in the shuttle?
I thought, and I'm sure other people have their own opinion, but of all, I went around the Earth 207 times, and the most beautiful spot that just jumped out at me every time I went over it were the Bahamas, right off the state of Florida in the United States. The Bahama Islands and the tongue of the ocean where it gets thousands of feet deep, right alongside the great coral reefs there is beautiful. You've got the beautiful coral atolls out in the Pacific. You've got the Hawaiian Islands, but there was just something about the color around the Bahamas that struck me as the most beautiful.
Can you talk a bit about the sensation of seeing your home from the shuttle as you were going up?
Well, I had that slide in there, and it's really a true story. I wanted a picture of my home from space, but it's hard to pick it out with the naked eye. But with binoculars, with some high powered binocular type gyro stabilized viewing optics, you can get pretty darn close to actually seeing the house.
That's amazing. That is quite something. When do you think, and it's very hard to predict, but when do you think proper commercial space travel, in the sense of relatively normal, non-Elon Musk type people, will be able to go into space and perhaps spend a prolonged period of time there?
And spend a long period of time there? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
It's first of all, even for the short duration space flights where you want to look at the black vacuum of space and the beautiful blue planet and the atmosphere, I think that's going to come fairly quickly. The more we fly, the lower the cost is going to be, and I think you're going to see great progress in that over the next few years. Now, with respect to going up into space for a long time and orbiting the Earth, you can only look out the window for so long. So I think that, what's going to be a long duration, maybe 3 days in space or something like that. That's going to take a little bit longer to reduce the price of that. But what we really need to do, and it's a ways off in the distant future, is we need to come up with a propulsion system that is not as dynamic as what we have today, which is really nothing more than controlling an explosion through a nozzle. That's how we get our rocket propulsion. We need to get a propulsion system that's more like a commercial aircraft going up, so that instead of maybe taking 8.5 minutes to get to orbital velocity, it might take you 7-8 hours to get there, but it's a nice, fully safe ride up there. And if you have a problem on the way, you can come back home and fix the problem.
Do you think the average person who hasn't spent their career testing helicopters for the Coast Guard, do you think they would be capable, with a bit of training, of getting into one of those rockets and withstanding the Gforce, but also perhaps withstanding the terror that might come?
Well, I never thought it was terrorizing. It was another job and another vehicle to fly in. But first of all, we only experience 3 Gs. And yes, it helps to be healthy to do that. When we fly our fighter jets, or like the supersonic trainer that, I flew as an astronaut, we could pull 6 Gs in that, so you'd be 6 times the Earth's gravity pulling down on your head. But the big difference between space shuttle or rocket flying with Gs and compared to flying a jet, when you fly a jet, the Gs are all down through your head. So it's in the same direction that we're accustomed to, on the planet. Whereas when you're going up and accelerating into space, it's pushed against your chest, and so it compresses your chest a little bit. But in the shuttle, for example, we only pulled 3 Gs. Yes, it got a little bit uncomfortable to breathe and a little bit strained to talk, but you don't have to be, a physical superhuman to withstand that. Just about any human that's healthy at all can withstand that.
Can you also talk a bit about some of the other physical sensations you get when you're orbiting the Earth? For example, I've heard that there's such a thing as post-weightlessness nausea when you return to the Earth. Some people feel quite sick. Is that something you experienced or your colleagues experienced?
Well, I think that's a little bit upside down. What we have is called space adaptation syndrome. You generally feel fine when you come back home, but you have to readjust. But what happens when you first get up into space, the first thing you notice is that your inner ear doesn't work the way it does down on the surface of the Earth. Your semicircular canals, have fluid and little hairs in there called cilia. And when you turn your head, those semicircular canals or inner ear tells your brain, hey, you just turned your head, move your eyes with the head. And that's something you learn as an infant. It's not an innate process in the human being. So when you get up in space in zero gravity and you turn your head, your eyes stay fixed and finally ratchet over to where your head is. And that's kind of an uncomfortable feeling when you do that. And that's why you'll see astronauts floating around. They generally keep their head attached to their shoulders. The next thing that happens is that when you stand here on Earth, the hydrostatic pressure, you're 70% water. So the hydrostatic pressure down in the bottom of your feet is almost an atmosphere greater than it is at the top of your head. And that helps you stand erect as a human being. When you go up on orbit, your body says, hey, I don't need all that water or fluid down in my legs anymore. So right away, you have what's called a fluid shift, and your body is getting rid of all of that water in your lower extremities. And not only do you urinate a lot, but it fills all your sinus cavities and gives you a blazing headache. And, we call it moon face. So there's a couple things. Your digestive system shuts down. It's difficult to swallow. So when you first get up in space, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Neil Armstrong or Bruce Melnick. When you first get in space, you don't feel good for a couple days. You don't feel 100%. Some people get violently ill up there on their first couple days up there. But generally, when you come back home, that all goes away, after a while, and you feel fine.
That's good. It sounds quite unpleasant, to be quite honest. How was your sleeping on the shuttle? I've also heard that some people sleep incredibly well after a while, after they adapt a little bit because of the weightlessness.
Well, sleeping is really easy there. You have no pressure against your body whatsoever. It's not like laying in bed at home where you have 1 G of gravity holding you plastered to the bed. So when you're ready to go to sleep, the pilot and commander usually just float up to their driver's seats and loosely strap themselves in so they don't float around. And the rest of us get in these cloth sleeping bags, and we can Velcro ourselves to any bulkhead, a ceiling, the floor, wherever you want to hang yourself to go to sleep. And the interesting thing about it, and it's not true to all astronauts, but I think the lion's share of us, because our heart's not pumping the blood against the force of gravity, we're not exercising our muscles as much, even though we try to exercise up there. Your body doesn't get as tired as it does down on the surface of the Earth. So in my case, I'm an 8-hour a day or 8-hour a night sleep person on Earth. But up in space, I could get by easily with 5 or less hours. And I took that extra 3 hours and looked out the window and watched the world go by.
That's nice. Do you know if anyone has ever drunk alcohol in space? Would that be something that's possible? And if it were possible, did you drink any alcohol in space?
I did not. We didn't on either of my shuttle flights. As far as I know, that it wasn't carried on the shuttle flights, but I've heard a rumor, probably like everybody else, is that the Russians might partake a little bit up on their portion of the space station.
Excellent. And during your, 13 days in total you spent in space? The 4 and the 9, of course, the 2 shuttle trips. Did you have any moments where you felt a bit overwhelmed by the experience?
No, not at all. First of all, the training is outstanding. So there's very little surprises. The only time I felt a little bit of angst or a little bit of unhappiness even was the first time on my second flight that we tried to grab that satellite, and we thought it was going to be a very easy thing where Pierre would just put that capture bar against the bottom of the satellite and it would grab it and it would go just like we trained. And when that didn't happen, when the first time he put the capture bar on that 9,000-pound satellite and it bounced off into outer space, that was like a very sad moment in my life, because I didn't know how we were going to recover from that.
Have you ever been to a holiday destination on Earth that was more amazing than your time in space?
I don't think anything can ever be more amazing, but the thing that comes closest to it is the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. I mean, there you can experience all the rockets and capsules of the past. There's actually flown hardware. There's a flown Mercury capsule, flown Gemini capsule. We've got the Atlantis space shuttle on pedestals in its own building where you can almost touch Atlantis, that flew 33 times into space. We've got a Saturn V rocket, the entire full rocket that would have flown. It's one of the three remaining that remained after the end of the program, and you can get right up close to that. And then our new Gateway exhibit, we've got the Falcon 9 rocket hanging from the ceiling that launched the Tesla into orbit, around the sun. So there's nothing that's better than flying in space, but as close as you can get is to come to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex and experience it there.
Excellent. And quickly, what's the next big thing in space exploration that you're excited about?
Well, the next Artemis flight, it's really easy to say that. And I would jump on that flight in a minute. We flew Artemis, the first mission, just the latter part of this last year. This next flight is going to do a few orbits around the Earth to do a lot of the systems checkout. And then it's going to actually launch on a free return trajectory around the moon, meaning that it's going to get sent out there and just do a lap around the moon and come home. And that's going to have people on it. So they're going to get a nice up close and personal look of the moon. And that is really exciting to me. That's, once we fill that square, I'll be excited about the people that are going to go and land on the moon the following year.
Excellent. I think I might be out of time with you. I don't want to take up too much of your time for your next interview, but thank you so much for speaking to me. I really, really appreciate it. And it was lovely to meet you yesterday.
Nice meeting you, Milo. I enjoyed it. Thank you.